Most people go through life hoping things will somehow work out. They wish for more money, better opportunities, meaningful success. But wishing is soft. It has no backbone. The real turning point in life comes when a person moves from vague desire to a burning, definite purpose. That shift alone separates those who merely survive from those who build something extraordinary. If you look closely at anyone who has achieved lasting success, you will notice one common thread. They did not drift into wealth or influence by accident. They began with a clear idea of what they wanted, and they wanted it intensely. Not casually. Not, "it would be nice if," but a deep, emotional, almost obsessive commitment to reaching a specific goal. Desire, when it becomes intense enough, turns into a force that shapes behavior, decisions, and even perception. The difference between a weak wish and a powerful desire is clarity and commitment. A weak wish says, "I'd like to be rich someday." A powerful desire says, "I will earn this specific amount of money by this specific date, and I will give this much value in return." When the mind is given something exact, it begins to organize itself around that target. The subconscious starts searching for ideas, opportunities, and connections that align with the goal. But when the desire is vague, the mind has nothing to lock onto. There is a powerful mental process that transforms desire into reality. First, you define exactly what you want, not roughly. Exactly. Then you decide what you are willing to give in return. Nothing comes without cost. It may be time, learning, risk, effort, or comfort. Third, you fix a definite date. Without a deadline, goals remain dreams. Fourth, you create a clear plan and begin immediately, even if you feel unprepared. And finally, you put your goal into writing and read it aloud daily, feeling the emotion of already having achieved it. This daily repetition is not superstition. It is conditioning. The human mind responds to repetition combined with emotion. When you repeatedly impress an idea onto your subconscious, it begins to accept it as real. Once accepted, your behavior gradually shifts. You begin to notice different opportunities. You take different risks. You speak differently. Confidence grows, not because you forced it, but because your inner belief has strengthened. Consider the story of a young man who once stood before a great inventor and decided he would become his business partner. He had no money, no influence, no special connections. But he had something far more powerful, a definite purpose. He traveled to meet the inventor and announced his intention. He was not hired as a partner. Instead, he was given a small, low-level job. Many would have felt disappointed and walked away. But he saw it differently. In his mind, he was already a partner. The small job was simply the starting point. For years he worked quietly, learning, observing, and waiting. He did not complain. He did not lose focus. When an opportunity appeared that others ignored, he stepped forward and seized it. That single moment changed his life. He eventually became the partner he had envisioned years earlier. What made the difference was not luck. It was sustained desire combined with patience and action. The mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant in it consistently will grow. Fear can grow there, doubt can grow there, or faith can grow there. Most people unknowingly plant seeds of fear every day. They repeat to themselves that things are difficult, that competition is too strong, that the economy is unstable, that success is for others. These thoughts, repeated often enough, become beliefs, and beliefs guide action. Faith works the same way, but in the opposite direction. When you repeatedly affirm your definite purpose and emotionally visualize its achievement, faith slowly replaces doubt. You begin to act as someone who expects success rather than someone who fears failure. This internal shift is subtle, but its external effects are enormous. Another crucial truth is that desire alone is not enough without persistence. Many people start excited. They set goals, write plans, and feel inspired. But at the first sign of difficulty, their enthusiasm fades. True desire reveals itself in moments of resistance. When setbacks occur, when money is tight, when others doubt you, do you retreat? Or does your desire grow stronger? Temporary defeat is not permanent failure. Every successful person has faced moments when everything seemed lost. The key difference is interpretation. One person sees a setback as proof they should quit. Another sees it as feedback, as a lesson, as a test of commitment. Often, the greatest opportunities are hidden inside what first looks like failure. Doors closed, prospects laughed, but he persisted. He refined his approach, studied human psychology, and continued knocking on doors. Over time, he became one of the most successful in his field. What changed? Not the market, not the product. His persistence sharpened his skill and strengthened his belief. The mind does not distinguish strongly between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. That is why emotion is essential. Cold repetition of words has little power. But when you read your written goal with conviction, when you truly feel gratitude for its realization, you begin to influence your subconscious. And the subconscious influences action more than logic ever will. There is also a warning hidden in this philosophy. The same principle that builds wealth can also build poverty if misused. If a person constantly fears illness, they become hyper-aware of every symptom. If they fear financial ruin, they hesitate at every opportunity. Fear, repeated often enough, creates the very conditions it dreads. The mind moves toward what it focuses on. Definiteness of purpose also simplifies decision-making. When you know clearly what you want, many distractions lose their appeal. Opportunities can be measured against your goal. Does this move me closer or farther away? Clarity eliminates confusion. It becomes easier to say no. Another overlooked element is association. The people around you influence the tone of your thinking. If you surround yourself with doubt, negativity will seep into your mind quietly. But if you surround yourself with ambition, creativity, and belief, your own standards rise. Success is rarely a solo journey. Even the strongest individuals draw strength from supportive alliances. All of this may sound simple, and in a way it is. But simple does not mean easy. To maintain a burning desire day after day requires discipline. To ignore criticism and persist through uncertainty requires emotional strength. To repeatedly visualize success while standing in present difficulty requires faith. Yet history shows that individuals who master their inner world often reshape their outer world. Wealth begins as a thought. Every company, every invention, every fortune started as an idea in someone's mind. The question is not whether thoughts have power. The question is whether you are deliberately choosing yours. Right now, somewhere within you, there is likely a desire that you have not fully committed to. Perhaps you have softened it to avoid disappointment. Perhaps you have delayed action waiting for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment rarely arrives. Momentum begins with a decision. The first real step toward transformation is not money, connections, or special talent. It is a definite decision backed by emotion. When the mind is fully committed, it begins to find ways. Resources appear, ideas form, courage grows. But desire and faith are only the foundation. To turn thought into tangible wealth requires something even more disciplined and structured. It requires understanding how the mind communicates with itself, how belief is programmed, and how organized planning transforms imagination into action. And that is where the deeper mechanics of success begin to unfold. There is a quiet power inside the human mind that most people never consciously use. It works constantly, day and night, shaping behavior, filtering opportunities, influencing confidence, and even determining how much risk a person is willing to take. This power is the subconscious. It does not argue. It does not question logic. It simply accepts what it is repeatedly given, especially when those ideas are wrapped in emotion. If you understand this deeply, you begin to see that success is less about external circumstances and more about internal programming. Every thought mixed with feeling becomes a seed planted in the subconscious. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the seed goes. Fear, love, ambition, jealousy, hope, these are not just feelings. They are energetic forces that push thoughts into the deeper layers of the mind. Once planted, those thoughts influence actions in subtle but powerful ways. A person who constantly entertains doubt may not even realize why they hesitate when opportunity appears. A person who cultivates belief may not fully understand why they move forward with unusual confidence. The difference lies beneath awareness. The subconscious does not respond strongly to weak statements. Quiet, mechanical repetition has limited impact. But when you speak your goals with intensity, when you visualize them vividly, when you allow yourself to feel the pride, relief, and satisfaction of achievement, something begins to shift internally. The mind starts aligning itself with that emotional picture. Escaped your attention. This is why controlled imagination matters. Imagination is not fantasy. It is the workshop of the mind. Every material achievement begins as an image before it becomes physical reality. There are two types of imagination at work in human progress. One is synthetic imagination, which rearranges existing ideas into new combinations. The other is creative imagination, which produces flashes of insight that seem to come from beyond conscious reasoning. Both forms are strengthened when the mind is focused on a definite purpose. When a person immerses themselves in a clear goal, their imagination begins searching for pathways. Sometimes solutions appear during focused thinking. Other times they surface unexpectedly, while walking, driving, or even waking from sleep. These moments of insight are not random. They are the result of sustained mental concentration on a specific objective. The mind, once given direction, continues working even when you are not consciously aware of it. But imagination without action is wasted potential. Many people have brilliant ideas that never materialize because they lack organized planning. Organized planning turns thought into structure. It means building a practical strategy, seeking advice from capable individuals, testing approaches, adjusting when necessary, and persisting through trial and error. Plans rarely succeed perfectly on the first attempt. Flexibility is essential. If one approach fails, it does not mean the goal is impossible. It simply means the method must evolve. One of the most powerful accelerators of progress is collaboration with the right people. When two or more minds come together in harmony toward a shared purpose, something remarkable happens. The combined intelligence becomes greater than the sum of individual efforts. Ideas expand. Solutions improve. Motivation strengthens. A supportive alliance protects against discouragement and widens perspective. Isolation weakens ambition, cooperation multiplies it. However, harmony is critical. If collaboration is filled with ego, jealousy, or mistrust, the creative energy disappears. Successful alliances are built on mutual respect, clear communication, and aligned goals. When individuals truly desire each other's success, their collective capacity grows. This principle explains why many great achievements are rarely the result of one isolated genius. Behind most visible success stands an invisible network of support. Another truth that must be understood is the role of decision. Indecision drains energy. It creates mental conflict and weakens confidence. People who achieve meaningful success tend to make decisions promptly and change them slowly, if at all. This does not mean they are reckless. It means they trust their judgment once sufficient information is gathered. Constant hesitation trains the mind to doubt itself. Decisiveness, even when imperfect, builds inner strength. Closely connected to decision is persistence. Persistence is not dramatic. It is quiet, steady effort sustained over time. Most people underestimate how long meaningful achievement requires. When results do not appear quickly, enthusiasm fades. But persistence converts temporary defeat into eventual success. Often, the moment when quitting feels most tempting is precisely when breakthrough is nearest. Those who persist develop resilience, and resilience compounds over time. Fear is the primary enemy of persistence. Fear of criticism prevents bold action. Fear of poverty restricts risk-taking. Fear of failure paralyzes initiative. These fears operate subtly, often disguised as practical caution. While caution has its place, excessive fear suffocates growth. The way to weaken fear is through repeated action and repeated affirmation of purpose. Courage grows through use, just as muscles grow through exercise. Self-confidence is not a personality trait given at birth. It is built through deliberate conditioning. When you repeatedly remind yourself of your goals, when you act despite uncertainty, when you associate with ambitious individuals, confidence slowly becomes natural. Each small victory reinforces belief. Each act of persistence strengthens identity. Eventually, confidence stops feeling forced and begins feeling normal. There is also an important relationship between emotion and achievement that many ignore. Human energy is deeply connected to emotion. Strong emotion can be destructive when misdirected, but when channeled toward constructive goals, it becomes fuel. Passion, when disciplined, drives extraordinary effort. Intense desire, when organized, produces innovation. Even frustration, when redirected properly, can become motivation for improvement. The mind seeks expression. If not directed toward creative, strong goals often appear unusually driven. Their inner energy has direction. It is also essential to guard the mind carefully. Negative influences, constant criticism, pessimistic environments, discouraging voices, can slowly erode belief. Protecting your mental atmosphere is not selfish, it is necessary. Just as you would not allow poison into your body, you must be selective about the ideas you allow into your consciousness. Exposure to constructive conversation, inspiring examples, and forward-thinking individuals strengthens resolve. As these principles begin working together, definite purpose, emotionalized belief, imagination, organized planning, supportive alliances, decisive action, and persistent effort, a new identity forms. You no longer act like someone hoping for success. You begin acting like someone building it. And that identity shift changes everything. Yet there is an even deeper layer of power within human nature that remains largely misunderstood. It is a source of immense drive and creativity, often expressed in its simplest form as raw desire. When properly understood and redirected, it becomes one of the most potent forces for achievement available to any individual. Understanding how to harness that force without being controlled by it opens another dimension of possibility, one that explains why certain individuals seem to possess unstoppable energy and magnetic influence. There is a form of energy inside every human being that is far more powerful than most realize. It is raw, emotional, and deeply instinctive. In its basic form, it expresses itself as physical attraction and desire. But when understood at a higher level, it becomes something far greater, a driving force capable of fueling creativity, ambition, courage, and long-term achievement. The difference between those who waste this energy and those who transform it often explains the gap between ordinary lives and extraordinary ones. This energy, when left undirected, seeks immediate expression. It pushes toward pleasure, distraction, and temporary satisfaction. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. It is natural. But when a person learns to redirect this intensity into constructive work, innovation, or leadership, something remarkable happens. The same force that might have been scattered across short-term indulgences becomes concentrated power. History shows that many highly successful individuals possessed strong emotional intensity. They were not dull, passive personalities. They felt deeply. They desired strongly. But instead of allowing those emotions to control them, they channeled them into ambition, invention, art, business, and influence. Emotional energy, when redirected, sharpens imagination and strengthens persistence. It adds magnetism to personality and conviction to speech. When this energy is transmuted, meaning shifted from physical expression into mental and creative effort, it heightens sensitivity to ideas. Imagination becomes more vivid. Confidence increases. Personal presence becomes more noticeable. Others respond differently. This is not mystical. It is psychological. When a person is driven by intense purpose, their voice carries certainty. Their body language reflects belief. Their decisions feel decisive. People are naturally drawn to that kind of energy. But this transformation does not happen automatically. It requires awareness. It requires discipline. It requires choosing long-term achievement over short-term satisfaction. The individual who constantly gives in to impulse weakens their focus. The one who learns to hold, guide, and redirect that force strengthens their mind. Over time, this controlled energy becomes a powerful advantage. There is also a connection between emotional maturity and success. Deep emotional experiences often awaken ambition. Many people notice that after falling deeply in love, facing heartbreak, or experiencing profound loss, their drive intensifies. Strong emotion seems to activate dormant potential. When directed wisely, it becomes fuel for growth rather than destruction. Another element that strengthens achievement is the influence of the right life partner. A supportive partner can amplify confidence and encourage bold decisions. A discouraging partner can quietly undermine ambition. The emotional climate at home often determines the mental clarity at work. Harmony in personal relationships creates stability. Stability strengthens focus, and focus produces results. Beyond emotional energy lies another powerful influence: the mind's sensitivity to suggestion. Every environment is filled with opinions, beliefs, and expectations. Many people absorb these influences unconsciously. If surrounded by negativity, their thinking gradually thoughts are constantly transmitted through words, expressions, and attitudes. Even without explicit statements, people communicate belief or doubt. When you maintain strong conviction in your purpose, you not only influence yourself but also influence others. Confidence spreads. Enthusiasm becomes contagious. Leadership often begins not with authority but with certainty. However, there are invisible enemies that quietly sabotage progress. The most dangerous are fear in its various forms. Fear of poverty causes hesitation in financial decisions. Fear of criticism prevents bold action. Fear of illness weakens mental strength. Fear of loss creates insecurity. Fear of failure destroys initiative. And fear of death can create quiet anxiety beneath everyday life. These fears rarely announce themselves openly. Instead, they appear as procrastination, excuses, self-doubt, or overthinking. To overcome fear, one must first recognize it. Many people live under its influence without naming it. Once identified, fear weakens. It thrives in vagueness. Clear thinking exposes it. Replacing fear requires deliberate thought replacement. Instead of imagining worst-case scenarios, one must consciously imagine successful outcomes. Instead of rehearsing failure, rehearse competence. Repetition builds belief. Self-analysis becomes important here. Quietly observing your own behavior can reveal hidden fears. Do you delay decisions? Do you avoid responsibility? Do you seek constant reassurance? Do you downplay your ambitions to avoid criticism? These patterns often signal deeper anxiety. Awareness allows correction. The people who rise above average circumstances tend to possess emotional control combined with bold vision. They feel intensely, but they think clearly. They dream ambitiously, but they plan practically. They experience fear, but they act anyway. Their success is not the absence of doubt, it is the refusal to let doubt dominate. Another overlooked factor in achievement is the subconscious influence of habitual thinking. Repeated thoughts become automatic reactions. If a person repeatedly tells themselves that money is difficult to earn, they subconsciously resist opportunity. If they constantly affirm capability and abundance, their mind begins scanning for ways to create value. Over months and years, this difference compounds dramatically. The human mind is adaptable. It responds to what it is fed. Just as physical health depends on diet, mental strength depends on thought diet. Reading inspiring material, engaging in meaningful conversation, and reflecting on personal goals strengthen mental resilience. Idle gossip, constant news negativity, and exposure to chronic pessimism weaken it. As emotional energy is redirected, fear is reduced, belief is strengthened, and focus becomes sharper, a person begins to operate from a higher level of consciousness. They no longer react impulsively to every external stimulus. They respond deliberately. They choose their thoughts more carefully. They become architects rather than victims of circumstance. Gradually, results begin to reflect this internal shift. Opportunities seem to increase. Relationships improve. Financial progress accelerates. Outsiders may call it luck, but in reality, it is alignment, thoughts, emotions, and actions moving in the same direction. Still, one final challenge remains. Even with desire, belief, disciplined emotion, and organized plans, many individuals stop short of lasting wealth because they never fully master themselves. They may conquer markets, build businesses, or gain influence, yet struggle internally with ego, impatience, or imbalance. True wealth is not only financial. It includes self-control, peace of mind, and clarity of purpose. Understanding how to balance ambition with wisdom, power with humility, and persistence with adaptability becomes the next stage of growth. And it is in mastering that balance that a person transforms not only their bank account, but their entire way of living. There comes a point in the pursuit of success where the outer game is no longer the main challenge. The strategies are known, the goals are clear, the plans are in motion. What begins to matter most is mastery over self. Without self-discipline, even the strongest desire weakens. Without emotional control, even the best opportunities are mishandled. The real battlefield is internal, and the outcome there determines everything else. Self-discipline is not harshness. It is alignment. It means your actions consistently reflect your highest intentions instead of your passing moods. Most people operate according to how they feel in the moment. If they feel motivated, they work hard. If they feel discouraged, they slow down. If they feel criticized, they retreat. Their long-term vision. They wake up at a certain time not because it feels exciting, but because it supports their goal. They study, plan, save, invest, and improve even when there is no applause. Over time, this steady discipline creates confidence. When you repeatedly prove to yourself that you can follow through, self-trust grows. And self-trust is one of the most valuable assets anyone can possess. Closely connected to discipline is the ability to control attention. In a world filled with distractions, the person who can focus deeply holds an enormous advantage. Attention is mental currency. Wherever it flows, energy follows. If attention is scattered across trivial matters, progress slows. If attention is concentrated on meaningful objectives, results accelerate. Concentration is developed through practice. It begins with deciding what truly matters and eliminating what does not. Many opportunities will appear attractive, but not all align with your definite purpose. The mature mind evaluates carefully. It asks whether a new idea strengthens or weakens the central mission. This clarity prevents wasted effort. Another powerful trait is humility. It may seem surprising in a discussion about ambition, but humility protects growth. When a person becomes overly proud, they stop learning. They reject feedback. They assume they already know enough. Humility keeps the mind open. It allows mistakes to become lessons instead of wounds to ego. The most effective leaders often combine strong confidence with quiet modesty. They are secure enough to listen. Leadership itself is not about authority or control. True leadership is the ability to inspire cooperation. It is built on integrity, fairness, and emotional stability. People willingly follow those who demonstrate consistency between words and actions. They respect those who admit errors and correct them quickly. They trust those who remain calm under pressure. Anger, jealousy, and resentment weaken leadership. These emotions cloud judgment. They create unnecessary conflict. The disciplined individual acknowledges negative emotions but does not allow them to dictate behavior. Instead, they pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully. This emotional control preserves relationships and reputation. Reputation, once damaged, is difficult to rebuild. That is why character matters deeply in the long run. Wealth gained without integrity rarely brings peace. Influence gained through manipulation eventually collapses. Sustainable success rests on trust. Trust grows slowly through repeated honest behavior. Another essential principle is accurate thinking. Many failures result not from lack of effort, but from distorted perception. Rumors, assumptions, and emotional reactions often replace clear analysis. Accurate thinking requires separating facts from opinions. It requires questioning sources and verifying information. It demands calm reasoning, especially in moments of uncertainty. Financial independence, for example, depends on rational evaluation of risk and reward. Fear may cause someone to avoid opportunity altogether. Greed may push someone into reckless decisions. Balanced judgment sits between these extremes. It weighs evidence carefully, considers long-term consequences, and acts with measured confidence. The habit of saving and intelligent investment also reflects self-mastery. Immediate gratification tempts most people. Spending brings temporary pleasure, but building wealth requires delayed reward. It requires trusting that disciplined accumulation will create future freedom. This mindset shift, from consumption to creation, is transformative. At a deeper level, there is also the concept of harmony between the conscious and subconscious mind. When your daily actions align with your written goals, inner conflict decreases. When you say you desire success but act lazily, tension arises. That tension often manifests as stress or self-doubt. Alignment brings peace. It feels clean and powerful. Gratitude plays a subtle but important role in maintaining this alignment. When you acknowledge progress, even small improvements, motivation strengthens. Gratitude shifts attention from lack to growth. It does not eliminate ambition, it stabilizes it. A person who appreciates current progress while striving for more maintains emotional balance. There is also wisdom in knowing when to adjust plans without abandoning purpose. Rigidity can be as harmful as indecision. Markets change. Circumstances evolve. Strategies must adapt. The goal may remain constant, but the path can shift. Flexibility allows survival through uncertainty. The individuals who achieve enduring success often share one final trait: they continue growing long after achieving their initial goals. For them, wealth becomes less about accumulation and more about contribution. The question shifts from, how much can I gain, to, how much value can I create? Ironically, this shift often leads to even greater prosperity. When focus turns towards service and impact, opportunities multiply. In the end, the principles of achievement are simple but profound. Clear purpose directs the mind. Emotionalized belief strengthens it. Imagination generates ideas. Organized planning structures effort. Persistence overcomes obstacles. Self-discipline ensures consistency. Emotional control preserves clarity. Integrity sustains reputation. Continuous growth expands possibility. The transformation from average circumstances to meaningful wealth is not mysterious. It begins with thought, strengthens through belief, solidifies through action, and matures through character. The outer world reflects the inner world over time. And when a person fully understands this, not just intellectually, but through daily practice, they realize that the true secret was never hidden. It was always present, waiting to be activated through deliberate thought and disciplined living. After a person has learned to discipline the mind, control emotion, and act with purpose, something quieter begins to develop. It is not loud ambition. It is not restless hunger. It is a deeper awareness of how thoughts connect to outcomes over long periods of time. This awareness changes how one approaches life itself. Success is no longer chased desperately. It is built deliberately. At this stage, patience becomes a strategic advantage. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a short period and underestimate what consistent effort can produce over years. They start with enthusiasm, expect immediate results, and feel discouraged when progress is slow. But real wealth, whether financial or personal, compounds gradually. It grows like a tree. In the beginning, there is little visible change. Roots develop underground. Strength forms quietly. Only later does visible expansion occur. The person who understands this does not panic during slow seasons. They continue planting, nurturing, adjusting. They trust the process because they understand the principle behind it. Impatience often leads to poor decisions, abandoning solid plans, chasing trends, or cutting ethical corners. Patience protects long-term vision. Another powerful shift that happens in mature success is the understanding of responsibility. It becomes clear that blaming circumstances is a waste of energy. Economic conditions, competition, background, education, all these factors matter, but they are not ultimate barriers. The decisive factor remains how one responds. Two individuals can face identical setbacks. One uses it as justification to quit. The other uses it as motivation to improve. The difference lies in interpretation. Taking full responsibility is liberating. It removes excuses. It also removes helplessness. When you accept that your results are shaped largely by your choices, you gain control. Even when circumstances cannot be changed immediately, your attitude and effort can. That mindset alone creates resilience. There is also a deeper understanding of fear at this level. Fear does not disappear entirely. It evolves. Early fears may be about survival, money, stability, approval. Later fears may involve maintaining success, protecting reputation, or making larger decisions with greater consequences. But the method for handling fear remains the same. Face it directly. Analyze it rationally. Act in spite of it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement through it. As wealth or influence increases, new temptations appear. Ego can quietly grow. Comfort can soften discipline. Success can create isolation if one begins to feel superior. This is why self-awareness must continue. Regular reflection keeps the mind grounded. Asking simple questions helps. Are my actions aligned with my values? Am I still learning? Am I treating others with respect? Am I improving or merely maintaining? True prosperity includes peace of mind. Without peace, money becomes heavy, achievements feel hollow, balance becomes essential. Health, relationships, and integrity must grow alongside ambition. Neglecting these areas eventually weakens performance anyway. A clear mind works best in a healthy body. Creative thinking flows more easily in stable relationships. Another important realization is that influence carries responsibility. As a person grows, others observe and often imitate. Words carry more weight. Decisions affect more lives. This awareness encourages thoughtful leadership. It shifts focus from personal gain to collective impact. Legacy becomes a consideration. What will remain after temporary success deepens. This does not mean abandoning ambition. It means expanding its purpose. Achievement becomes more than accumulation. It becomes expression of values. Continuous learning also becomes non-negotiable. The world evolves. Markets shift. Technology advances. Social dynamics change. The mind that stops adapting gradually declines. Curiosity keeps thinking sharp. Reading, meaningful conversations, reflection, and experimentation ensure that growth does not stagnate. There is also power in simplicity. As understanding deepens, complexity often reduces. The principles remain the same: clear goals, disciplined thought, consistent action, ethical conduct. The noise surrounding success fades. One no longer seeks shortcuts because it becomes obvious that shortcuts rarely sustain. Solid foundations matter more than quick wins. Over time, confidence transforms into quiet certainty. There is less need to prove anything. Decisions feel calmer. Reactions become measured. Challenges are seen as puzzles rather than threats. Even failure loses its sting because it is viewed as temporary feedback rather than identity. Perhaps the most profound realization is that wealth begins internally and manifests externally. A poor mindset can waste great opportunity. A rich mindset can create opportunity from very little. Richness of mindset includes gratitude, courage, discipline, generosity, and belief in possibility. It refuses to dwell in limitation. It searches for value creation instead of complaint. When a person truly integrates these principles, life changes in a subtle but powerful way. Work becomes purposeful. Money becomes a tool rather than a master. Relationships become partnerships instead of transactions. Fear loses dominance. Decisions carry intention. The journey that began with a simple desire for financial success ends in something far broader: mastery over thought, emotion, and action. Financial wealth may follow, often substantially, but even beyond financial reward, there emerges a sense of agency. Life feels directed rather than accidental, and that may be the greatest achievement of all. To understand that the mind, when trained and focused, can transform circumstances. To recognize that sustained belief and disciplined effort shape destiny. To live not as a passive observer of events, but as an intentional creator of outcomes. When this awareness becomes permanent, success stops being a distant goal. It becomes a natural extension of who you are and how you think. There is one final layer that quietly determines whether all these principles become temporary motivation or a permanent way of living. It is the ability to integrate everything into identity, not just practicing discipline when inspired, not just thinking positively when convenient, but becoming the kind of person for whom clear thinking, persistence, and purposeful action are natural. Identity shapes behavior more powerfully than goals do. A person who sees themselves as someone trying to succeed behaves differently from someone who sees themselves as disciplined, resourceful, and resilient. The first hopes, the second decides. The first waits for confidence. The second acts and builds confidence through action. When success principles move from something you do to something you are, consistency stops feeling forced. This identity shift happens gradually. Every time you follow through on a commitment, even a small one, you reinforce the image of yourself as reliable. Every time you persist through difficulty, you strengthen the belief that you are resilient. Every time you think independently instead of following fear-driven crowds, you reinforce mental leadership. Over months and years, these repeated actions form character, and character determines destiny far more than isolated efforts. There is also a deep connection between clarity and peace. When you know what you stand for and what you are building, distractions lose their emotional pull. Comparison weakens. Envy fades. You are less concerned with how fast others are moving because you understand your own direction. That internal stability creates emotional freedom. Emotional freedom does not mean the absence of challenges. It means your inner state is no longer controlled by every external event. Markets may fluctuate. People may criticize. Plans may require adjustment. But your core remains steady because it is rooted in principle rather than circumstance. This steadiness is rare, and it becomes a powerful advantage in uncertain environments. At this stage, success becomes less about intensity and more about rhythm. There is focused effort, followed by rest and reflection. There is ambition. Another subtle transformation is the relationship with money itself. In the beginning, money may feel urgent, a symbol of security, validation, or freedom. Over time, as understanding deepens, money becomes neutral. It is recognized as stored value, a medium of exchange, a tool for expansion. It amplifies who you already are. If discipline and generosity exist, money expands them. If fear or ego dominate, money magnifies those as well. That realization encourages inner work even more, because external wealth without internal strength can create imbalance. Many individuals achieve financial success yet struggle with anxiety, broken relationships, or lack of fulfillment. The missing piece is harmony. True prosperity aligns material achievement with mental clarity and emotional stability. Service often becomes the natural extension of this harmony. When you understand how thoughts shape reality, you begin to see the potential in others. Encouraging someone, sharing knowledge, creating opportunity, these acts multiply impact beyond personal gain. Teaching by example becomes more powerful than teaching by instruction. Others observe discipline, calm thinking, and integrity, and they learn indirectly. Legacy then becomes a quiet motivator. Not legacy in the sense of fame, but in the sense of influence that outlives direct presence. What habits are you modeling? What mindset are you spreading? What systems are you building that will continue creating value? These questions refine ambition into something enduring. There is also wisdom in accepting that growth never truly ends. New levels bring new lessons. Each achievement reveals further areas for refinement. This prevents complacency. It keeps curiosity alive. The mind remains active, alert, evolving. At the deepest level, the entire journey circles back to thought. Everything begins there. Thoughts shape beliefs. Beliefs guide decisions. Decisions create actions. Actions form habits. Habits build character. Character shapes destiny. When this chain is understood clearly, responsibility becomes empowering rather than heavy. You realize that while you cannot control everything, you can always influence the starting point, your thinking. Guarding that starting point becomes a daily practice. Choosing constructive thoughts over destructive ones. Replacing complaint with creativity. Turning obstacles into strategy sessions rather than excuses. This mental discipline compounds quietly but powerfully. In the end, the path to wealth and achievement is not a mystery reserved for a select few. It is a structured process of internal development expressed through external action. It demands clarity of purpose, emotional intensity directed wisely, persistent effort, intelligent planning, collaboration, integrity, and continuous growth. None of these are beyond reach, but they require commitment. And when commitment becomes identity, success stops being something you chase. It becomes something you naturally attract through who you have become. There is a quiet moment that comes after long effort, when you look back and realize that the biggest transformation was never in your bank account, your title, or your status. It was in the way you think. The real victory was internal. You no longer react to life the way you once did. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer shrink your ambitions to fit the comfort of others. Something inside has stabilized. At the beginning of the journey, success feels external. It looks like money, recognition, influence, freedom. And there is nothing wrong with wanting those things. They represent security and possibility. But over time, you begin to understand that these are outcomes, not foundations. The foundation is mental discipline. It is the habit of directing thought instead of being directed by it. Most people live in reaction mode. News influences their mood. Opinions influence their decisions. Temporary setbacks influence their self-image. They move through life responding emotionally to circumstances. But the person who has trained their mind responds differently. They pause. They evaluate. They choose their reaction deliberately. That pause, that small gap between event and response, becomes the source of power. In that space, you decide whether to interpret a challenge as defeat or as instruction. You decide whether criticism will wound you or refine you. You decide whether fear will stop you or sharpen your preparation. The world does not change instantly, but your relationship to it does. And that shift alters outcomes over time. There is also a deeper appreciation for long-term vision. Short-term thinking creates anxiety because it magnifies every fluctuation. You begin to notice how often people abandon progress just before breakthrough. They interpret difficulty as a signal to quit, when in reality it is often a test of commitment. Persistence, once fully understood, feels less like struggle and more like loyalty to your own purpose. You stay not because it is easy, but because you decided. Another change that happens at this stage is the disappearance of envy. When your focus is clear, comparison loses its emotional charge. Someone else's success does not threaten you. It informs you. It proves what is possible. You understand that resources are not as limited as fear suggests. Creativity, service, innovation, these expand opportunity. This mindset also transforms how you handle money. Instead of seeing it as something to cling to or fear losing, you view it as a flow. You respect it, manage it, invest it wisely. But you do not panic over every movement. You understand that value creation precedes financial reward. If you focus on creating meaningful value, money follows as a natural result. Failure, too, changes meaning. It stops feeling personal. It becomes data. An experiment did not produce the expected result. A strategy needs adjustment. A skill requires improvement. That is all. This emotional detachment from failure increases courage. You are more willing to attempt ambitious projects because your identity is no longer tied to immediate outcomes. With this maturity comes a stronger sense of inner authority. You trust your reasoning more. You still seek advice and learn from others, but you no longer depend on approval to act. This independence is not arrogance. It is stability. You understand your principles, and you measure decisions against them. Health also becomes more important. Without physical energy, mental sharpness fades. You begin to value sleep, movement, nutrition, and recovery not as luxuries but as strategic assets. A clear mind operates best in a well-maintained body. Discipline extends beyond business into lifestyle. Relationships grow more intentional. You become selective about the company you keep. Not in a judgmental way, but in a protective way. You understand that environment shapes thought, and thought shapes results. You gravitate toward people who challenge you constructively, who think expansively, who act with integrity. At this level, even silence becomes powerful. You do not feel the need to broadcast every plan. You work quietly. You build steadily. You let results speak. This restraint preserves energy. It prevents unnecessary conflict. It creates an aura of confidence that does not rely on noise. Gratitude deepens as well. Not superficial gratitude, but a grounded appreciation for growth itself. You recognize how far you have come, not just materially, but mentally. You remember the doubts, the early struggles, the uncertainty, and instead of resenting those phases, you see how they shaped strength. Eventually, the pursuit of success becomes less about acquisition and more about expression. You express discipline through consistency. You express intelligence through thoughtful decisions. You express strength through calm responses. You express ambition through meaningful projects. Wealth becomes one expression among many, not the sole measure of worth. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all is this: the mind that built one level of success can build another. The principles do not expire. Clear purpose still directs action. Belief still shapes perception. Persistence still overcomes resistance. Self-control still preserves clarity. Growth remains available. When you fully absorb this, fear of the future weakens. You trust your ability to adapt, to learn, to rebuild if necessary. Circumstances may change, but your internal foundation remains. That foundation, built from disciplined thought and deliberate action, becomes your true security. In the end, thinking and growing rich was never only about money. It was about expanding your capacity, expanding your awareness, expanding your discipline, expanding your courage. Money may come in large amounts as a byproduct, but the greater wealth is the transformation of mind. And once the mind has been trained to operate at that level, there is no returning to small thinking. There is only forward movement, guided not by impulse, but by intention. At the highest level of understanding, you begin to see that success is not something you chase anymore. It becomes something you align with. The struggle softens, not because effort disappears, but because your inner world is no longer in conflict. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction. There is coherence, and coherence creates power. Earlier in life, energy is often scattered. You want many, and your discipline consistent, inner conflict fades. You say what you mean. You act on what you decide. You correct mistakes quickly. This simplicity creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most underestimated forces in achievement. Small disciplined actions repeated daily create a rhythm. That rhythm builds confidence. Confidence fuels bigger actions. Bigger actions create larger results. Over time, progress feels less forced and more natural. You no longer need constant motivation because structure carries you forward. You also begin to understand timing. Not every opportunity must be seized immediately. Not every idea must be acted upon. Wisdom involves knowing when to move aggressively and when to observe patiently. Emotional control allows you to wait without anxiety. Strategic thinking replaces impulsive reaction. At this stage, setbacks lose their emotional weight. They are still inconvenient. They may still require adjustment, but they do not shake your identity. You have seen yourself overcome before. That memory of past resilience becomes a source of quiet strength. You trust the process because you have lived it. There is also a deeper relationship with risk. In the beginning, risk feels frightening because you doubt your ability to recover. Later, risk becomes calculated. You analyze downside carefully, but you do not let fear dominate. You understand that stagnation carries its own risk. Growth always involves uncertainty. The key is intelligent preparation combined with decisive action. Another shift happens in how you measure wealth. Financial gain is still important, but it is no longer the only metric. Time becomes valuable. Freedom of choice becomes valuable. The ability to focus on meaningful work becomes valuable. You realize that true wealth includes control over your schedule, your attention, and your environment. Control over attention, especially, becomes sacred. In a world designed to capture focus through endless information and distraction, guarding your mind becomes an act of strength. You choose what you consume. You choose what influences you. You understand that mental clarity is directly tied to input quality. As clarity deepens, simplicity grows more attractive. Complex lifestyles often create unnecessary stress. Simple routines, clear priorities, organized systems, these create mental space. And mental space allows creative thought. Innovation rarely appears in chaos. It appears in calm, concentrated states. There is also a sense of detachment that develops, not indifference, but healthy separation from outcomes. You commit fully to effort, but you do not allow your emotional stability to depend entirely on results. This detachment paradoxically improves performance. Without the pressure of desperation, thinking becomes sharper, decisions become cleaner, service continues to expand in importance. When you recognize how powerful directed thought can be, you naturally want to help others discover that power within themselves. Encouraging someone to think bigger, to act braver, to persist longer, these become meaningful contributions. Influence shifts from domination to empowerment. You also begin to notice that external validation matters less. Praise feels pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism feels informative but not defining. Your standards come from within. You measure yourself against your own potential rather than public opinion. This independence creates emotional freedom. The journey, which may have started with a simple desire for financial improvement, matures into a philosophy of living. You see patterns in everything. Thoughts precede actions. Beliefs precede results. Discipline precedes freedom. Value creation precedes reward. These patterns become guiding principles. And yet, despite all this growth, humility remains essential. The moment you believe you have mastered everything is the moment decline begins. There is always more to learn. New challenges will arise. Markets will shift. Technology will evolve. The disciplined mind stays adaptable. In quiet moments, you may reflect on the person you once were, uncertain, reactive, perhaps doubtful, and you recognize the distance traveled, not just in achievements, but in awareness. You see how deliberate thought reshaped habits, how habits reshaped character, and how character reshaped circumstances. This awareness brings a deep sense of ownership over your life. You are no longer waiting for opportunity. You are creating it. You are no longer fearing change. You are using it. You are no longer defined by background or limitations. You are defined by intention and action. Ultimately, the power to think and grow rich is not a single tactic or formula. It is a disciplined way of approaching steadily without applause. And once you fully understand that your thoughts are the starting point of every outcome, you realize something liberating. The greatest asset you will ever possess is already within you. Your mind, when trained, becomes the architect of your reality. From that realization forward, growth is no longer accidental. It is intentional. When you reach the final stage of this understanding, something becomes very clear. The real secret was never hidden in complex strategies or rare opportunities. It was always in the quiet, daily management of your own mind. The difference between those who build lasting success and those who only dream about it is not luck, background, or even intelligence. It is sustained control over thought. Every external result you see in the world began as an internal decision. A decision to believe instead of doubt. A decision to act instead of delay. A decision to persist instead of surrender. These decisions seem small in the moment, almost invisible. But repeated consistently, they create a different life. You start to notice that most limitations are self-imposed. People say they lack resources, but often they lack clarity. They say they lack opportunity, but often they lack initiative. They say they lack support, but often they have not built alliances. The world is not perfectly fair, but it is far more responsive than most people assume. When you become definite in purpose and disciplined in action, doors that once seemed closed begin to open. This does not mean the path becomes easy. Challenges remain. Competition remains. Uncertainty remains. But your relationship with these obstacles changes completely. Instead of seeing them as walls, you see them as filters. They filter out the uncommitted. They test seriousness. They refine strategy. Obstacles stop being enemies and start becoming trainers. There is also a deeper understanding of belief at this level. Belief is not blind optimism. It is trained expectation. When you have repeatedly set goals, built plans, taken action, adjusted after setbacks, and eventually achieved results, your mind collects evidence. That evidence strengthens future belief. Confidence stops being fragile because it is rooted in experience. This is why action is so critical. Thinking alone is not enough. Visualization alone is not enough. Affirmation alone is not enough. They prepare the mind, but action proves capability. Every completed task, every difficult conversation handled with composure, every calculated risk taken responsibly, these become bricks in the structure of self-belief. As self-belief strengthens, fear continues to lose ground. You still feel it occasionally, but it no longer dictates behavior. You recognize fear as a signal, not a command. You analyze it, prepare for it, and move forward anyway. Courage becomes habitual. Another realization that emerges is the importance of environment design. Instead of relying solely on willpower, you structure your surroundings to support your goals. You create routines that reduce decision fatigue. You organize finances carefully. You choose conversations that stimulate growth. You remove distractions that weaken focus. Success becomes less about dramatic bursts of effort and more about intelligent systems. Over time, these systems create stability. Stability creates freedom. And freedom allows higher, level thinking. When survival pressure decreases, creativity expands. You begin exploring ideas not just for income, but for impact. You think beyond immediate needs and consider long-term contribution. There is also a mature understanding of balance. Extreme obsession can produce short-term gains but long-term burnout. Complete relaxation produces comfort but not growth. The wise path sits between intensity and sustainability. You work hard, but you rest strategically. You pursue ambition, but you maintain relationships. You build wealth, but you protect health. The more you grow, the more you realize that mastery is internal. Markets rise and fall. Industries evolve. Technologies replace old methods. But disciplined thinking remains timeless. Clear goals, emotional control, persistent effort, ethical conduct, these principles do not expire. They adapt to any era. Eventually, you stop searching for shortcuts entirely. You understand that any gain without foundation is fragile. Real wealth, the kind that lasts and multiplies, is built slowly and intelligently. It is supported by character. It is protected by wisdom. It is expanded by service. And perhaps the most empowering truth of all is this: you do not need to be extraordinary at the start. You only need to be willing to think differently and act. When you fully absorb this, you realize that the process never truly ends. There will always be new goals, new visions, new levels of growth. But now you possess the framework. You understand how to set a definite purpose. You understand how to build belief through repetition and emotion. You understand how to create plans, form alliances, act decisively, and persist beyond temporary defeat. You understand that wealth begins in thought and is shaped by character. And once that understanding becomes permanent, you are no longer merely hoping for success. You are consciously creating it, step by deliberate step. In the end, everything comes back to a single responsibility: guarding the direction of your own mind. After all the strategies, all the stories of persistence and faith, all the lessons about discipline and organized planning, what remains is this quiet truth: your life moves in the direction of your dominant thoughts. Whether you are aware of it or not, the ideas you repeatedly entertain are shaping your future. Most people underestimate this because thought feels invisible. It has no weight, no sound, no physical form. Yet it is the starting point of every visible result. A business begins as an idea. A fortune begins as a decision. A transformation begins as a shift in belief. When you truly understand this, you stop being careless with your thinking. You begin to notice how often negative ideas attempt to enter unnoticed. Doubt disguised as realism. Fear disguised as caution. Laziness disguised as waiting for the right time. These thoughts do not announce themselves loudly. They appear quietly and, if repeated often enough, become accepted as truth. That is how potential gets buried. But the disciplined mind interrupts this process. It questions limiting thoughts. It replaces them intentionally. Instead of saying, "This is too difficult," it asks, "What skill do I need to develop?" Instead of concluding, "I am not capable," it asks, "How can I improve?" This shift from emotional reaction to constructive analysis changes everything. You also become aware of how powerful repetition is. The ideas you feed your mind daily become your internal environment. If you constantly consume negativity, conflict, and fear-driven information, your thinking will slowly narrow. If you consistently expose yourself to intelligent discussion, growth-oriented ideas, and examples of resilience, your thinking expands. At this level, learning becomes a lifestyle. You no longer learn only when forced by necessity. You study because growth itself is rewarding. You reflect because self-awareness sharpens judgment. You seek feedback not to defend yourself, but to refine yourself. Improvement becomes continuous. Another realization settles in: success is not owned, it is maintained. Complacency is the silent enemy of achievement. The habits that built one level of prosperity must be sustained and refined to protect it. Discipline cannot disappear once comfort arrives. In fact, comfort often demands even greater awareness. You also understand more clearly that money amplifies character. If you are generous and thoughtful, wealth allows you to expand those qualities. If you are careless or arrogant, wealth magnifies that as well. This awareness encourages inner alignment. You continue strengthening integrity because you know external power without internal balance leads to instability. Over time, peace of mind becomes one of your highest priorities. Not passive comfort, but earned peace, the calm that comes from knowing you are living intentionally. You are not avoiding responsibility. You are not drifting through circumstances. You are actively shaping your direction. This peace does not remove ambition. It refines it. You pursue goals with focus, but without desperation. You build with patience, but without hesitation. You lead with confidence, but without ego. There is strength in this balance. You also gain a broader perspective on wealth itself. Financial abundance is valuable because it creates options. It allows freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom to support causes you believe in. But it is not the ultimate measure of fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from growth, contribution, and alignment between values and action. Looking back, you may realize that the greatest transformation was not financial at all. It was mental. You learned to think independently. You learned to direct emotion instead of being directed by it. You learned to persist beyond visible discouragement. You learned to trust disciplined effort over temporary excitement. These lessons, once internalized, cannot be taken away. Circumstances may change. Markets may fluctuate. Unexpected events may occur. But the mind you have trained remains yours. And with that mind, create value. It is about strengthening belief until it produces action. It is about mastering yourself so thoroughly that external conditions lose their power to control your direction. The journey begins with desire. It strengthens with belief. It matures through discipline. And it endures through character. Once you truly understand that your thoughts are the architects of your reality, you stop living by accident. You begin living by design. At the deepest level of this journey, there is a realization that changes how you see not only success, but life itself. You understand that the mind is not just a tool for earning money or achieving goals. It is the source of your entire experience. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your days. And when that becomes clear, you treat your thoughts with the same seriousness that others reserve for their finances. You begin to see that every morning is more than the start of another routine. It is the beginning of another mental direction. Before the world speaks to you, you choose what you will tell yourself. You remind yourself of your purpose. You revisit your long-term vision. You align your actions with the person you have decided to become. This quiet ritual strengthens identity. Identity is everything now. You are no longer chasing wealth as an external reward. You are living as someone who builds value. You are not hoping for discipline. You operate with discipline. You are not wishing for confidence. You behave with confidence, and it reinforces itself. The gap between intention and action has narrowed. There is also a greater sense of emotional stability. Situations that once would have disturbed you no longer hold the same power. Delays feel temporary. Criticism feels manageable. Even unexpected loss, while painful, does not destroy your foundation. You have trained yourself to think beyond immediate emotion. You respond with perspective. Perspective brings wisdom. You understand that no single event defines you. A failure is not a verdict. A success is not permanent security. Both are moments in a longer journey. This long view protects you from extremes, from arrogance during prosperity and despair during hardship. Another important shift is your relationship with time. Earlier, time may have felt like pressure. There was urgency to achieve quickly, to prove yourself, to reach visible milestones. Now time feels like an ally. You respect it. You use it intentionally. But you are no longer rushed by it. You understand that steady progress outperforms frantic effort. This maturity also deepens gratitude. You appreciate opportunities more because you know how easily they could have been missed. You appreciate growth because you remember confusion. You appreciate discipline because you understand the cost of disorder. Gratitude strengthens contentment without weakening ambition. There is also an increased awareness of influence. Your mindset affects others whether you intend it or not. Your calm during difficulty reassures people. Your persistence during setbacks encourages them. Your thoughtful decision-making sets a standard. Without speaking about philosophy, you demonstrate it. At this stage, leadership feels natural. Not because you demand attention, but because your stability attracts trust. People are drawn to clarity. They are drawn to consistency. They are drawn to individuals who think before reacting and act before complaining. Leadership becomes a byproduct of character. You also recognize that success leaves clues. The same mental laws that worked before will continue to work. Clear intention still focuses energy. Emotional belief still strengthens action. Organized planning still multiplies efficiency. Persistence still overcomes resistance. These principles remain constant regardless of industry or era. Yet there is humility in knowing that growth never truly ends. You remain a student. You analyze your own patterns. You refine habits. You correct small weaknesses before they become larger problems. You stay mentally alert. Complacency is treated as a warning sign, not a reward. Eventually, you reach a state where external recognition matters very little. You measure success internally. Did you honor your principles? Did you act with courage? Did you build something of value? Did you improve from yesterday? These questions become your personal scoreboard. And perhaps the most peaceful realization of all is this: you are not competing with the world. You are competing with your former self. Each day is an opportunity to think more clearly, act more decisively, and live more intentionally than before. This removes unnecessary pressure. Growth becomes personal, not comparative. In the final reflection, the idea of growing rich, financial abundance may accompany these qualities, often significantly. But even without numbers attached, the internal wealth is undeniable. You now understand that the greatest power available to you has always been your ability to choose your thoughts. That power cannot be taxed, stolen, or limited by circumstance. It can only be neglected or developed. And once developed, it turns ordinary days into deliberate progress, ordinary effort into meaningful results, and ordinary beginnings into extraordinary outcomes. When everything settles, when the ambition becomes steady instead of urgent, and when discipline becomes natural instead of forced, you arrive at a quiet understanding. The true transformation was never about reaching a destination. It was about becoming someone capable of building any destination you choose. At the start, the desire for wealth may have been specific: a certain income, a business, financial security, freedom from pressure. Those goals are important. They give direction. But over time, something deeper takes shape. You develop the ability to think independently. You strengthen emotional control. You build resilience against setbacks. You learn how to organize ideas into plans and plans into results. That capability becomes more valuable than any single achievement. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never did before. Not with blind confidence, but with tested confidence. You have seen yourself persist when quitting would have been easier. You have corrected mistakes instead of hiding from them. You have acted despite uncertainty. That evidence changes your self-image permanently. This new self-image is powerful. It affects how you walk into rooms. It affects how you negotiate. It affects how you respond to challenges. You are no longer intimidated by big goals because you understand the process behind them. Large outcomes are simply the result of many disciplined steps, taken consistently. There is also a deeper calm. You are no longer chasing approval. You are no longer measuring your worth by comparison. You recognize that every person is operating at their own level of awareness and discipline. Instead of judging, you observe. Instead of competing blindly, you focus deliberately. Financially, you understand the long game. You respect compounding. You value intelligent investment over reckless speculation. You understand that preservation of capital is as important as growth. You think in terms of decades, not days. This perspective protects you from emotional decisions. Mentally, you guard your environment. You limit exposure to negativity. You choose conversations that challenge and elevate. You protect your mornings and evenings, knowing that the state of your mind at the beginning and end of the day influences everything in between. You have become selective, not because you are superior, but because you understand influence. Emotionally, you handle success with balance. You enjoy achievement, but you do not let it define you. You experience disappointment, but you do not let it stop you. You have learned that emotional extremes distort judgment. Stability is strength. You also see more clearly that service multiplies success. When you help others think more clearly, act more confidently, and believe more strongly, you reinforce those qualities within yourself. Teaching deepens understanding. Encouraging others strengthens your own conviction. Contribution becomes part of your identity. Over time, the fear that once seemed so powerful fades into the background. Fear of poverty is replaced by confidence in your ability to create value. Fear of criticism is replaced by respect for constructive feedback. Fear of failure is replaced by willingness to learn. Fear loses its grip when discipline grows. The most important shift, however, is this: you no longer see yourself as a product of circumstances. You see yourself as a product of decisions. This perspective gives you control. It reminds you daily that while you cannot control everything, you can always control your response, your effort, and your thinking. That awareness makes life feel intentional. You wake up with direction. You work with purpose. You rest without guilt because you know your structure is strong. You move forward not in desperation, but in confidence. In the end, growing rich is not a single event. It is a gradual expansion of capability. It is the steady strengthening of mind and character. It is the consistent alignment of thought and action. Money may arrive in impressive amounts, but the greater achievement is internal mastery. And once you reach that level of mastery, you realize something profound. You are no longer dependent on one opportunity, one industry, or one phase of life. You carry the principles within you, and adapt with wisdom. And when you truly understand that, you are not just rich in resources. You are rich in power, rich in resilience, and rich in possibility. As the journey reaches its highest understanding, one final truth becomes impossible to ignore: the power you were searching for was never outside of you. It was always in your ability to choose your thoughts, to direct your focus, and to act in alignment with a clear purpose. Everything else, money, influence, recognition, simply followed that inner order. In the beginning, it may have felt like you were trying to change your circumstances. You wanted more income, more stability, more control. But over time, you realized that circumstances respond to identity. When you change the way you think, you change the way you act. When you change the way you act, you changed your results. The world did not suddenly become easier. You became stronger. Strength, in this sense, is not loud or aggressive. It is steady. It is the quiet certainty that you can handle what comes. It is the calm belief that obstacles can be solved. It is the disciplined habit of returning to your purpose when distractions attempt to pull you away. You now understand that clarity is one of the rarest advantages in life. Most people drift because they never decide clearly what they want. They move from one idea to another, one opportunity to another, reacting instead of directing. But when your aim is defined, energy gathers around it. Decisions become simpler. Trade-offs become clearer. Progress becomes measurable. This clarity also sharpens your standards. You expect more from yourself, not in a harsh way, but in a respectful way. You know what you are capable of. You do not tolerate prolonged laziness or self-pity because they no longer match your identity. At the same time, you allow room for rest and recovery, understanding that sustainable growth requires balance. Another powerful shift is how you handle uncertainty. Earlier in life, uncertainty may have felt threatening. Now it feels like space for creativity, for innovation, for expansion. You recognize that certainty is often an illusion. Markets change, technology evolves, conditions shift, but adaptability, built on disciplined thinking, keeps you stable. You have also learned to detach your self-worth from temporary outcomes. A project may fail, an investment may underperform, a plan may require revision, but none of these define you. They are events, not identity. This separation protects your confidence and keeps you moving forward. The longer you practice these principles, the more automatic they become. Positive thinking is no longer forced, it is habitual. Organized planning is no longer overwhelming, it is routine. Persistence is no longer dramatic, it is expected. You do not need constant reminders because these behaviors are integrated into who you are. And with integration comes freedom. You are free from the fear of starting over because you trust your ability to rebuild. You are free from dependence on approval because your standards are internal. You are free from the paralysis of doubt because you have proven your resilience. This freedom is the ultimate form of wealth. It cannot be measured on a financial statement. It does not fluctuate with the economy. It comes from self-mastery. When your mind is disciplined, your emotions directed, and your actions intentional, you possess something few ever fully develop. You also begin to see the responsibility that comes with this awareness. When you know the power of thought, you cannot pretend ignorance. You cannot blame endlessly. You cannot live unconsciously. You are aware that each day's thinking is shaping tomorrow's reality. That awareness sharpens your choices. In quiet reflection, you may realize that the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about uncovering the potential that was already within you. The discipline, the creativity, the resilience, they were always present, waiting for direction. Now, instead of asking whether success is possible, you ask how far you are willing to go. Instead of wondering whether you are capable, you focus on refining your capability. Instead of fearing the future, you prepare for it with confidence. The principles remain simple, even at this highest level. Define your purpose clearly. Feed your mind with belief. Act consistently. Persist through resistance. Guard your character. Adapt intelligently. Contribute generously. Repeat. Over time, these simple practices compound into extraordinary outcomes. Now, instead of asking whether success is possible, you ask how far you are willing to go. Instead of wondering whether you are capable, you focus on refining your capability. Instead, persist through resistance. Guard your character. Adapt intelligently. Contribute generously. Repeat. Over time, these simple practices compound into extraordinary outcomes. And when you finally step back and observe the arc of your growth, you understand that thinking and growing rich was never just a slogan. It was a description of a process of mental elevation that naturally produces material results. You did not simply earn more, you became more. And that is a form of wealth that no circumstance can ever take away. When you stand at this final point of reflection, there is a quiet confidence that replaces the restless urgency you once felt. You are no longer chasing success as something distant. You are living it as a daily practice. The hunger that once felt impatient has matured into steady determination. You understand now that greatness is not built in dramatic moments, but in ordinary days handled with extraordinary consistency. The most powerful realization is that nothing magical ever happened. There was no sudden secret unlocked, no hidden door opened for a chosen few. What changed was your level of awareness and discipline. You stopped leaving your future to chance. You stopped allowing fear to quietly dictate your limits. You began directing your mind with intention. This intentional thinking reshaped everything. You became selective about what you believe. You questioned negative assumptions instead of accepting them. You replaced vague wishes with defined objectives. And once your objectives were clear, your actions gained structure. Structure is freedom in disguise. Many people resist discipline because they see it as restriction. But in truth, structure eliminates chaos. It reduces wasted energy. It protects focus. It creates measurable progress. The routines you once struggled to maintain now feel natural because they support who you have become. There is also a noticeable shift in how you handle success itself. Earlier, achievement may have felt like a finish line. Now it feels like a checkpoint. You celebrate progress, but you remain grounded. You understand that every level brings new responsibility. Success is not something you hold, it is something you maintain through continued growth. Your relationship with challenges has permanently changed. When difficulty appears, you no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, you ask, "What is this teaching me?" This subtle shift transforms frustration into instruction. Obstacles become refining tools rather than stopping points. You also recognize that mastery requires repetition. Just as muscles grow through consistent training, mental strength grows through repeated discipline. There are days when motivation feels low. There are moments when doubt whispers quietly, but habits carry you forward. The foundation you built does not collapse because of temporary emotion. Another deep understanding emerges: wealth is attracted to value. When you focus intensely on becoming valuable, developing skills, solving problems, building trust, money becomes a natural byproduct. Chasing money directly often leads to shortcuts. Chasing value leads to sustainable reward. Integrity plays a larger role than ever before. You understand that trust compounds just like money. Each honest action builds credibility. Each kept promise strengthens reputation. In the long run, character determines opportunity. People prefer to collaborate with those who are stable, reliable, and fair. You have also learned the importance of internal silence. In a noisy world filled with constant opinions, you protect time for thinking. Reflection sharpens clarity. Quiet planning prevents careless decisions. In silence, ideas connect more deeply. Creativity expands when distraction is reduced. As your thinking matured, so did your patience. You no longer demand immediate results for every effort. You understand the rhythm of growth. Some seasons are for planting, some are for building, some are for harvesting. Respecting this rhythm prevents burnout and strengthens endurance. There is humility in recognizing that the journey continues. Even after building financial stability or professional influence, there is always more to refine. New goals emerge. New skills are required. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, you feel prepared. The process that built one level will build the next. Perhaps the most satisfying part of this transformation is the sense of ownership. You know your progress was not accidental. It was constructed through thought, decision, and action. That ownership builds deep confidence. If you created this level, you can create another. And so the cycle continues, not as a struggle, but as a... In the end, the philosophy is simple, yet profound. Direct your thoughts. Discipline your habits. Define your purpose. Persist through resistance. Protect your character. Continue learning. Create value. Serve generously. Live this way long enough, and wealth in every form, financial, emotional, intellectual, becomes a natural outcome. The journey that began with a desire for more ends with a deeper realization: you always had the ability to build more. You simply needed to master the one thing that controls everything else, your own mind. At the very end of this long reflection, what remains is not a formula, not a slogan, not even a specific financial goal. What remains is a way of living, a way of thinking, a quiet, disciplined approach to shaping your own reality. You now understand that success was never a single event waiting somewhere in the future. It was built in the privacy of your daily decisions. It was formed in the moments when you chose focus over distraction, courage over fear, persistence over surrender. No one applauded those moments. No one noticed them, but they accumulated. That accumulation is the true miracle. Small acts of discipline, repeated without drama, compound into massive change. A single clear decision strengthens identity. A single act of persistence builds resilience. A single refusal to entertain doubt protects confidence. Over months and years, these small mental victories reshape a life. You have also learned that the mind must be fed intentionally. Left unattended, it drifts toward worry, comparison, and fear. Directed deliberately, it produces ideas, solutions, and confidence. This responsibility never disappears. It is ongoing, but it no longer feels heavy. It feels empowering. There is strength in knowing that circumstances do not have the final word. Markets may fluctuate, opportunities may close, people may doubt, but none of these determine your direction unless you allow them to control your thinking. Once you grasp that fully, you stop living reactively. Instead, you begin living proactively. You anticipate challenges. You prepare mentally. You invest in skills. You build alliances. You manage resources wisely. You create options. And because you create options, you reduce fear. Preparedness replaces anxiety. You also develop a deeper respect for time. You realize that every day carries potential. Wasted days are not dramatic losses, but they quietly delay progress. Used wisely, even ordinary days move you closer to your vision. This awareness sharpens how you plan and how you prioritize. The idea of wealth itself becomes more expansive. Financial prosperity remains important, but it is no longer the only measure. Wealth becomes the freedom to choose meaningful work, the freedom to support family and community, the freedom to invest in growth, the freedom to rest without fear. You see clearly now that financial wealth without mental discipline is fragile, but mental discipline, even without immediate wealth, is powerful. It is a foundation that can produce prosperity again and again. That is why internal development always comes first. There is also a sense of responsibility that grows with this awareness. When you understand that disciplined thought can transform a life, you cannot ignore that knowledge. You become careful with your words, especially when speaking to others who are uncertain. Encouragement becomes intentional. Criticism becomes constructive. Influence becomes deliberate. Over time, your presence itself communicates stability. People sense when someone is grounded. They sense when someone is not easily shaken. That steadiness is rare, and because it is rare, it is valuable. You also recognize that growth requires discomfort. Comfort alone never built strength. The moments that stretched you, challenged you, forced you to think differently, those were the turning points. Instead of avoiding discomfort now, you assess it. If it leads to growth, you lean into it. And still, humility remains central. No matter how far you progress, you remember where you began. You remember the uncertainty, the hesitation, the doubt. That memory keeps you grounded. It keeps you grateful. It keeps you learning. In the final understanding, thinking and growing rich is not about obsession with money. It is about mastering cause and effect within your own mind. Thoughts cause actions. Actions cause results. Results reinforce belief. The cycle continues upward when guided consciously. You are no longer searching, and perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: the process can begin at any moment. No matter where someone starts, the first step is always the same. Choose a definite direction and commit to it with disciplined thought. From that single decision, everything else unfolds. Not overnight, not without effort, but inevitably, when persistence meets clarity and belief guides action. That is the quiet power you now carry, and it is enough to build any future you decide to pursue.